Chapter 169. Jingwan didn't know that for the people around Li Hanyuan, the opportunity to please her was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. After all, if one were to get on the good side of the future mistress, if one were to accidentally do something wrong, one word from her and nothing would happen to that person. If one were to gain her favor, they would be able to change their status and rise to the top. Compared to others, they would have to work a few years less. These were all great benefits. Moreover, the prince didn't stop them from doing so. On the contrary, sometimes he even showed a gesture to let them do it actively. In this way, who wouldn't rush up? If they didn't work hard, what if someone else beat them to it? They couldn't even cry. However, this work couldn't be done by Eunuch Mu alone. He couldn't go into the water to catch fish, and he didn't carry any seasonings for roasting fish, so he had to share the work with the guards. As for why the guards had seasonings for roasting fish, he could tell you that as the head of the guards and also the head of the secret guards, he had to go out for missions from time to time, so he had been forced to form a habit. Of course, there were seasonings for roasting meat everywhere. Speaking of which, roasting meat should be similar to roasting fish, right? In short, he must have some necessary things in the wild that couldn't be found anywhere else. Therefore, even if Eunuch Mu was robbed of most of the credit, he could only pinch his nose and accept it. Jingwan's maids didn't rest. They went into the woods, quickly picked up a pile of dry wood, set it up, and made a fire. Not to mention that Bai Xiao and He Mei used to go out in the woods, so this kind of thing was just a child's play. Even Jingwan's original 4 maids, who followed Jingwan in Qian Mansion, did a lot of this kind of thing. Therefore, when they did it, it really couldn't be seen that they were the head maids of the inner residence. It should be known that the head maids of a big family were more well-off than many pretty girls of small families. The stream in front of them was not deep, so naturally, they couldn't expect to catch any big fish. It was good enough that they could catch some. However, it was clear that In Yi's fishing skills weren't maxed out yet, let alone the others who were just guards. It was not easy to find a trace of the fish, but they were unable to catch the fish even after chasing and intercepting it. They even stirred up the water, and even the shadow of the fish could not be seen. The master and mistress were watching from the side. Not only did she fail to show off her skills, but she also felt awkward. Idiot, Li Hanyuan said indifferently, but he did not directly flip out. Jingwan glanced at Li Hanyuan. How could he talk to his own people like that? They would follow you around all day long to ensure your safety. Even if they didn't contribute anything, they would at least be rewarded for their hard work. Besides, they were just guards and not omnipotent. Forget it if you can't catch it. All of you come up. She was just a little nostalgic. It was not like she was hungry for food. Li Hanyuan naturally wouldn't refute Jingwan's words. He looked away. This group of idiots, after getting benefits today, he was afraid that they would want to please Wanwan even more. However, seeing that the idiots were still standing in the water, looking at each other, and then carefully looking at him, waiting for him to speak, they really became more and more stupid. Are you deaf? Didn't you hear? Very good. The conclusion was out. In the future, they would follow the mistress's words as the first standard. However, the shoes and socks were all wet, and the clothes were half wet. Even in the summer, it was not restrained to wear them. But obviously, they could only endure it at this time. For them, it was not a big deal. If you want to ask, why didn't they take off their shoes and socks before going into the water? Being indecent in front of the mistress, did they want to die? Miss, why don't you let this servant do it? He Mei volunteered and looked at Jingwan with some expectation. The 2 sisters used to grow up in the mountains. They were free and happy. Perhaps they had not enjoyed it since they began to wander about. After so many years, they were afraid that they had been suppressing it for a long time. Although it was a little inappropriate, what was wrong with letting them indulge once in a while? Jingwan chuckled. Okay, go ahead. Hey, Mei was excited. She quickly walked to the stream, squatted down, pressed her hand on the ground, and jumped steadily into the water. Her feet touched the surface of the water, and she unconsciously curved her lips. Obviously, she missed and enjoyed this feeling very much. Unintentionally, her nature was released to a greater extent. That kind of wild and flamboyant charm, with a relatively unique beauty, Jingwan believed that there were few men who would not be attracted to her. When Jingwan realized this, her heart thumped. She subconsciously looked at Li Honyuan, but unexpectedly met those eyes that were like stars after dispersing the darkness. It seemed that when she did not know, he had been looking at her so attentively, which made Jingwan unable to help but blush a little. After meeting this bastard from time to time, she would be teased until her face and ears turned red. Sure enough, she was also a person who could not avoid the vulgar appearance. Li Honyuan curved his lips and smiled. Jingwan, what were you thinking about just now? Nothing. Could she say that she was worried that he had ideas about her maid? It must be said that Li Hongyuan's eyes had been on Jingwan's face the whole time. His reaction at that moment was simply too obvious. How could Li Honyuan not know what she was thinking? His eyes fell on Hei Mei, who was already looking for a target in the water. According to her previous appearance, Li Honyuan originally intended to send her to Wan Wan's side. However, her martial arts were indeed better than her sister's, and better than the other maids who were specially trained. He also thought that Wan Wan was not such a superficial person. For the time being, he would send her to take a look. If he really did not like her, he would change her. However, Wan Wan was indeed different. She could be said to have turned something rotten into something magical. This might be an exaggeration, but it was an indisputable fact that the originally somewhat unsightly person had become a different kind of beauty. Your maidservant is very beautiful. Your Highness is too kind. Jingwan's voice was a little cold. How about giving her to me? Li Honyuan said with some interest. Wishful thinking. Jingwan's voice was not a little cold, but absolutely cold. Even her eyes were icy. But because she was angry, she did not notice that there was no emotion in his eyes. Those who did not know were sweating for Jingwan, especially a few maids who quickly surrounded Li Honyuan. It seemed that if Li Honyuan dared to make a move, they would fight him to the death. Hei Mei in the water also looked like she would explode at any time. However, there was still a little helplessness in her expression. After all, she was the one who caused the dispute between the girl and the future son-in-law. And those who knew could not help but wipe the sweat from the bottom of their hearts. Master, you have angered Miss Luo. When she treats you coldly, you will definitely not bear to do anything to her. At that time, the one who will suffer is still yourself, and the ones who will suffer more will also be us. You're already covered in dirty water. If you want to wash it clean, you don't know how long you'll have to wait. Please don't die, and please let us go. Is this vinegar? Li Honyuan did not seem to see their reaction as he calmly looked at her. Your Highness should not think too highly of yourself. Jingwan sneered. Jingwan's attitude made the commander of the Imperial Guards, who was standing not far away, unable to help but look over. The Jinqin Wang, who was unbelievably gentle to his fiancée, made him quite surprised. However, as the commander of the Imperial Guards, he had been in the palace for a long time and had a deeper impression of Jinqin Wang's temperament. Going head-on with him was definitely not a wise choice. He could not help but break out in cold sweat for Jingwan. However, he had his own responsibilities. This was not something that he should care about, nor was it something that he could care about. After all, this was a matter between the fiancé and fiancée. If you, a male outsider, got involved, it would only make things worse. Doing bad things with pure good intentions. Tisk, Jingwan doesn't care about herself, but is worried that the servant girl will be ruined by Ben Wang. Although he already knew that this would be the result, his heart was still a little bitter. He also thought that he had experienced everything, including death. His heart would not be hurt anymore. In fact, ever since he started over, there was really no one who could shake him in the slightest. He had long been prepared to grind with Jingwan to death. In this process, no matter what she did, she would not be able to hurt him. However, in the end, he still overestimated himself and underestimated the influence that Jingwan had on him. Li Hongyuan's words made Jingwan's anger subside slightly. Then, she discovered that his expression was a little wrong. He was still at him, but she felt that he was a little hurt. Was it an illusion? Jingwan has never seen me before. Regarding my matters, she also heard it from other people's mouths. They all say that seeing is believing and hearing is false. Not to mention, sometimes what you see may not be true. So how can you jump to conclusions? I thought that you should be different from others. Is it wishful thinking? It's probably true. This weak attitude made Jingwan at a loss in an instant. This script changed too quickly. She was a little unable to catch it. Li Honyuan reached out to touch her face. She didn't know what kind of mentality she had, but Jingwan didn't avoid it. Li Honyuan smiled. I'm just joking with you. You took it seriously. I'll leave for a while. Li Honyuan stood up and left without stopping. Soon, his figure was blocked by the trees. Jingwan frowned. Getting along with Jin Wang, she always felt that something was wrong. Even if she told herself to let nature take its course and not think too much, sometimes it was hard to not think too much. Following Li Honyuan, an E and the commander of the Imperial Guards also left. In this wilderness, no one knew if there would be an accident. Although there weren't so many accidents in the world, but everything should be prepared. If something happened to Jin Wang, even if they had 10 heads, they still wouldn't be able to bear it. When they chased after him, they only saw Li Hongyuan's cold and stern figure, standing with his hands behind his back. The two people subconsciously paused. They felt that the living king of hell right now was a real living king of hell. Just the figure of his back made people's scalp numb. Li Hongyuan turned around, and the two people subconsciously knelt on one knee. With the most respectful attitude, they waited for his orders. As it turned out, Li Hongyuan's mood was quite bad right now. The hostility seemed to be substantial, and he himself seemed to be somewhat unable to suppress it. Jingwan's words, at first, were only a little bitter, but that feeling didn't disappear so quickly. Instead, it became more and more intense. But now, he actually couldn't say what kind of feeling it was. If he didn't leave quickly, he was worried that he would do something irreparable to Jingwan. Although, it certainly wouldn't hurt her. Li Honyuan suppressed his impulse to kick the two people in front of him to death, thoroughly investigate the forest. Yes, the two people didn't dare to neglect. No matter what the reason was, in short, the current him couldn't be provoked. When they left Li Hongyuan's line of sight, their taut nerves relaxed a little. The sixth prince, Jin Wang, was ruthless and temperamental. The commander of the Imperial Guards had never experienced it more deeply than at this moment. It turned out that when he was in the palace, he had already restrained himself a lot. He glanced at an E. Following this kind of master, he really couldn't help but feel pity for him. And he saw his expression in his eyes. Pity me? You should take care of yourself. As the commander of the Imperial Guards, do you think Master will let you go? Just wait. One day, you will be in the same abyss of suffering as me. Wang can't lack people by his side. I will take people to investigate the situation in the forest. The commander said, not giving an E a chance to refuse. And he didn't insist and stayed in place. Looking back, he faintly saw that Master was still standing in the same place. Sure enough, it was normal for Master to be like this. Just now, when facing the future Wang Fei, the person who was a little hurt, a little wronged, and also showed weakness was definitely not their wise and powerful master. Well, he was master. It was just that their eyes were playing tricks on them. Hey Mei stood in the water, not knowing whether to continue or not. Miss, Jingwan smiled. Have you found the target? Miss, I'm waiting to eat fish. Hey Mei became spirited again. Miss, wait. As long as there is fish in the water, you will be able to eat it. Jingwan showed an expectant expression. As if she thought of something, she looked back and found Bai Xiao. She was the same as Qing Zhu, belonging to the more calm type. However, Jingwan felt that her mind should have the same idea as Hei Mei. So, Bai Xiao, go down and help Hei Mei. This way, it will be faster. Yes. Bai Xiao's eyes flashed with slight surprise, but in the end, she wasn't as excited as Hei Mei. The two sisters were used to working together. Even if they didn't say anything, they seemed to have a tacit understanding. Even if it was muddy water, nothing could be seen clearly. After feeling around, Hei Mei suddenly raised her hand. A fish that was only about 3 fingers wide swayed its tail between her hands, its gills constantly opening and closing. Li Hongyuan's guards silently covered their faces. So shameful. Several big men couldn't even compare to 2 delicate girls. The main purpose of catching fish was to satisfy Jingwan's craving. Whatever their master ate, at most, Jin Wang would taste it. Therefore, they caught 4 fish. And it was because they weren't big, otherwise, at most, they would have caught 2. The 2 people went ashore and walked upstream along the shore for a while. They cleaned the fish in the clear water and brought it back. Then, they rinsed it with the water in the water sack. After cutting the branches, they strung them up and roasted them on the fire. It was Qing Zhu's turn. While flipping, she sprinkled the seasoning on it. Soon, the aroma overflowed. Mu Gonggong looked and really wanted to die. Before, he thought that it was a good opportunity to curry favor with his female master. Now, it seemed that it was simply a disgrace. Look at her. That was a considerate and good servant. Just now, they were actually seen as a joke by her. Jingwan was also quite speechless. She followed her out for a stroll. There was a mat. That was easy to say. She might even need to sit down. There was a water sack. That was also easy to say. It was normal to be thirsty and want to drink water on a hot day. However, this dagger, this barbecue seasoning, and the fire starter from before, was it necessary to be so complete? Why did you think of taking these? Qing Zhu's nose twitched. Qing Zhu Jiejia's barbecue was fragrant. It was Mama who asked me to bring it. She said that it was just in case. It was really... Should it be said that she was worthy of being called Mama? She was really amazing. Hey, Mei and Bai shall go back and change clothes first. Jingwan said. In fact, she wanted to let Li Hongyuan's guards go back. However, they weren't her people, so it wasn't good to exceed her authority. It's okay, Mississippi. It's hot. Just shake it by the fire and it will dry in a while. It's not good to wear it and dry it. The moisture will be on the body. It doesn't matter now, but when you get old, you will suffer. Jingwan disagreed. In fact, Jingwan wanted to go back directly, but looking at Jin Wang, who was still nowhere to be seen, it didn't seem good to just leave like this. Moreover, the fish had just been roasted. If they just left like this, wouldn't it be a waste of their hard work? Qing Zhu thought about it and raised her head. Several Dage's bodies are also wet. It would be better to find a place to start a fire to roast. This was a suggestion, but also to drive them away. Thus, the few people quickly rolled away. In any case, there were still Imperial guards nearby. They only needed to stay a little further away and avoid them. The group of men left, and a fire was quickly started at the side. The sisters took off their shoes and socks, leaving only their dresses and trousers. They weren't wet much and were basically dry now. Even if they weren't dry, they couldn't take them off and roast them here. It didn't take long for them to quickly tidy up. The roasted fish in Qing Zhu's hands was also done. The skin was roasted to a golden yellow, but it wasn't burnt at all. Then, she saw Qing Zhu take out a plate somewhere. Looking at that posture, was she going to take the fish down, peel the skin and pick out the bones, and then let her enjoy it in a reserved and elegant manner? Jingwan's forehead was filled with black lines. She directly took the branch in Qing Zhu's hands and took a bite of the fish's back. Roasted like this, eating like this is more interesting. Jingwan was the master. If she wanted to eat like this, then eat like this. In any case, there were no outsiders here. As for whether or not they would be seen in the dark, who cares? As long as her family's miss felt comfortable and happy, it was fine. Jingwan quickly finished the fish. Even if the fish was relatively small, she still left behind a relatively complete skeleton. The taste is really good. Jingwan actually wanted them to taste it. Unfortunately, each and every one of them was very disciplined. Jingwan wiped her mouth and washed her hands. The Yi still wasn't coming back. If it was said that Li Hongyuan's previous reaction that Jingwan didn't care at all, it must be fake. After hesitating for a moment, she still decided to go and take a look. I'll go take a look. You don't have to follow. But Miss, the mama told them to keep an eye on Miss at all times. They couldn't be too far away, let alone out of their line of sight. Jingwan waved her hand. Don't worry, there are a lot of people nearby. There will definitely be no problem. She seemed to sigh helplessly. I made people unhappy. Naturally, I have to coax them back. Jingwan clapped her hands and went to the place where Li Hongyuan had left. Not long after, Jingwan saw a figure. Looking at the clothes, it should be Jin Wang's guard. That person was standing with his back to Jingwan. When he heard a slight sound, he immediately turned back. When he saw Jingwan, his heart trembled. "Miss Luo, it's inconvenient for Master to go back at this time." Jingwan stopped, her heart slightly moved. There seemed to be some abnormal sounds in the forest ahead. What was going on? However, since the guard was stopping her, Jingwan naturally wouldn't continue to rush over. Just as she was about to turn and leave, a black shadow rushed over here. Even if she didn't know what was going on, Jingwan knew that it was not good. Without saying anything, she turned and ran. Jingwan had never been a real delicate Mississippi. Therefore, when she ran, her speed wasn't just staggering. Stepping on branches and stones could cause her to trip and fall. That guard wasn't someone to be trifled with either. He pulled out his sword and slashed at the black shadow. The two people were soon engaged in a battle. However, it was clear that his skills were a notch higher. However, even so, he still couldn't get away. The two Imperial guards nearby also caught up. In a 3-against-1 situation, the man in black was more than enough to deal with one. Against two, he would be at a disadvantage, not to mention 3. However, before those two people could catch up, the man in black suddenly took out something from his waist. That was clearly a crossbow. Sacrificing an arm to deal with the guard, he aimed at Jingwan and pulled the trigger. Wan, be careful." That panicked cry even carried a mournful cry. Jingwan didn't even think and didn't care about the situation on the ground. Her foot slipped and she rolled. With a swoosh, the sound of something breaking through the air came from above. Jingwan saw an arrow firmly nailed to a tree, half of it embedded in it. Chapter 170. Jingwan's heart was filled with lingering fear. At the same time, she was extremely glad that the way she dodged was correct. She was even more glad that she wasn't raised to be a waste like an ordinary girl in the boudoir. Not to mention other things, if her reaction was slow, the result could be imagined. Jingwan turned her head to look at Li Hongyuan's side. The next moment, her pupils violently contracted, because Jin Xinwang grabbed the hair of the already subdued, black-clothed man with one hand, while the other hand held a dagger. It circled around the man's neck and slowly but powerfully slid past. Perhaps because he used too much force, or perhaps because the dagger was too sharp, blood spurted out. Even if Jin Xinwang was standing behind him, his body was not stained with blood for a while, but that hand was not spared. But he didn't seem to have the slightest reaction, like a god of death who had frozen all 7 emotions and 6 desires, concentrating on reaping lives. The black-clothed man's head was separated from his body, and he, like throwing away garbage, casually threw away the dagger and the head. Really, it was no different from the small things he casually threw away on a daily basis. The headless corpse was quickly pulled to one side, just because it blocked his path. The bodyguards cleared the obstacles at the first moment. Li Hongyuan walked with steady steps, step by step, toward Jingwan. Jingwan's elbow propped on the ground, wanting to get up, but she found that her body was stiff and somewhat unable to move. She didn't know that her face was deathly pale, showing obvious fear. Don't blame her psychological endurance for being poor. After all, it was the first time she saw such a scene. It was impossible for a normal person to not have any reaction. More importantly, Jin Xinwang at this time was really too frightening in her eyes. The world had faded, leaving only this man, a man who was like a god of death. Every step stepped on her heart, causing her heart to bear great pressure, as if half of it was being crushed. When there was something strange on her body, Jingwan was fiercely startled and was immediately helped up. Miss. It turned out that her several servant girls had rushed over at the fastest speed. Although they didn't see what exactly happened, but looking at Jingwan's state, looking at the King of Hell's imposing manner of Jin Xinwang, as well as the scene of Azura behind him, they couldn't help but stiffen and a chill ran down their backs. Even if Blackie and Bai Xiao had slaughtered a lot of prey, this person was different after all, not to mention Xing Zhu and the other maidservants who had never seen blood. Li Hongyuan didn't walk fast, but judging from his footsteps, he still had the same leisurely posture as when he was strolling with Jingwan. When he got closer, the maids protected Jingwan and retreated. Jingwan forced herself not to look at the scene behind him. She took a few deep breaths and try to calm herself down. This person came for her. Wang had avenged her. Jingwan retreated 2 steps and stopped, hinting the servant girls in front of her to move back. Although she was intimidated by his imposing manner, she still met his eyes that didn't miss her face. The hostility didn't disperse, the ferocity didn't diminish. However, in his eyes, Jingwan only saw herself. Wang is afraid of me. Li Hongyuan's voice was a bit hoarse, simply and straightforwardly stating a fact. He reached out as if he wanted to touch her face. However, his hand reached out halfway and retracted because his hand was covered in blood. Jingwan's lips moved, wanting to say something, but Li Hongyuan suddenly brushed past her. Jingwan was slightly startled and hastily turned around. Wang. Li Hongyuan paused, but didn't stop. It must be said that Jingwan wasn't a person who ate a meal. It must be said that when Li Hongyuan left, something was wrong. Now it was even more wrong. Before, it was because of her, and now it seemed that it was still because of her. Jingwan subconsciously chased after him, temporarily forgetting the mess behind her. However, whether it was the guards or the Imperial Guards, even if they hadn't seen this bloody scene, they were still men in the end. Moreover, they had all been through strict training. Even if their faces were a bit off, they wouldn't be afraid. What really made them apprehensive was Li Hongyuan himself. Even if an E had seen Li Hongyuan's true nature, he still felt his legs go soft because of Li Hongyuan's terrifying, imposing manner. The closer he got, the stronger the oppressive feeling. As a commander of the Imperial Guards, although he had already seen Li Hongyuan's bad temper, it was still within the range of tolerance. Unlike this time, there was a moment when he felt that he had 1 foot in the gates of hell. At this moment, when Li Hongyuan had walked far away and disappeared, he felt that he was still alive. However, looking at the corpse in front of them, the 2 people couldn't help but look at each other. Out of nowhere, there was an assassination attempt. Moreover, it was very obvious that this assassination attempt was made at the last minute. Moreover, the target was Luo San Mississippi. No, it should be said that it was mainly Luo San Miss, and Wang seemed to be venting his anger. Incidentally, if it could succeed, if it couldn't, it didn't matter, no matter how one looked at it. It made people feel very strange. There was a corpse in front of them, and there were 2 more in the forest behind them. Because Li Hongyuan had sensed something strange from the beginning, because his mood wasn't good, he temporarily left and let them investigate. Unexpectedly, they found that something was wrong. 3 black-clothed men appeared out of nowhere. Because their whereabouts were exposed, they actually wanted to withdraw. Unfortunately, even if their martial arts were high, they couldn't stop the pursuit and interception of several times more well-trained people. Moreover, because Wang was in a bad mood, he needed to dispatch people. It was even more impossible for the 3 people to escape and naturally became the target of his venting. Li Hongyuan fought 1 against 3. The others seemed to be loosely surrounded in all directions, but it let these 3 people clearly know that their escape route was blocked. Therefore, even if Li Hongyuan wasn't their main target, they didn't hold back. However, when they really fought, they then realized how terrifying this Wang, who was said to have no good points other than his skin, was. What was valiant was not only his skill, but also that suffocating aura. Moreover, he clearly had the opportunity to kill them in 1 blow, but he tortured them to death. They clearly knew that they were mice under a cat's paw, but they didn't dare to struggle. For them, death was nothing. They had already prepared to die a long time ago. However, they were very unreconciled that they couldn't complete the task. But at this time, the target delivered himself to their doorstep. Therefore, of the 3 people, 2 desperately blocked Li Hongyuan, and the other rushed towards Jingwan. When the black-clothed man shot an arrow, he also had one of his arms chopped off. He knew that his head would be cut off soon after, but as long as the task was completed, it would be worth it. However, the arrow that he thought would definitely hit the target was dodged, without hesitation, and the reaction was swift. When the black-clothed man's head was cut off while he was still alive, he stared unwaveringly at the unscathed Jingwan, and then died with his eyes wide open. The corpse had to be disposed of, and they also had a search nearby to see if there were any clues. Li Honyuan returned to the stream and waded into the water. He very seriously washed the blood off his hands and body. Jingwan stood on the shore and looked at him. On such a hot day, she inexplicably felt a little gloomy and cold. The servant girls plucked the grass off her body, but she didn't even realize it. Li Honyuan went ashore and carefully wiped off the water droplets. When he stood in front of Jingwan again, he basically couldn't smell the blood, but the terrifying aura on his body didn't decrease, but instead increased. Even so, Jingwan knew that he wouldn't hurt her, so she still bravely met his gaze. On the contrary, if she avoided him out of fear, he might really do something terrible. It was such a strange feeling. "Your Highness." Li Honyuan suddenly held her face and directly kissed her. Anxious and impatient, he may have ignored the others, but Jingwan did not. Moreover, they were standing right behind him. In his previous life, couples kissing in public would attract the attention of the surrounding people, let alone couples holding hands in public. It would be inappropriate for them to be scolded for being inappropriate in ancient times. Jingwan couldn't help but subconsciously struggle. However, Jingwan's struggle seemed to have stimulated him. His hand suddenly slid down her neck and tightly held her waist, as if he wanted to rub her into his bones and blood. Jingwan also realized that the more she struggled, the harder he used. Her waist was about to break from the strangulation. This man was like a beast that had lost its mind and was very possessive. Jingwan thought of the night when he was injured under the cliff of White Dragon Temple. He only hugged and kissed her and didn't do anything more. So she stopped struggling and let him kiss her. In order to calm him down, she even put her hands around his waist and gently stroked it. Thus, this scene made Jingwan's servant girls blush. They quickly retreated a few steps, and their eyes drifted, not daring to look at the two of them. The Yulin army commander arranged for a few people to stay behind to deal with the corpses, while the others dutifully continued to guard. But they didn't expect to see such a fiery scene when they arrived. It made each and every one of the big men very embarrassed. Then they retreated further away, letting themselves hide in the forest and disappear. However, many people muttered in their hearts. Should they say, as expected of Jin Qinhuang? He was extraordinary. Jingwan only felt that her lips were a little numb. Li Honyuan then released her. Even so, his lips were still attached to hers. Wan, don't be afraid of me. Even if I kill people like scything flax, I won't hurt a single strand of your hair. As he spoke, his lips opened and closed, brushing against Jingwan's lips. Jingwan didn't know what to say, so she just responded. She knew that what he said was true. Li Honyuan just hugged her. Do you know, I almost lost you again. At that moment, my heart almost jumped out. Fortunately you escaped. Otherwise. Chapter 171. However, just let it be. When you don't care about others, you naturally don't have to care about how others think of you in their hearts. Although this other person is the person you will get along with day and night in the future. However, even if it was a transfer of affection, there were some things that she actually benefited from. Jingwan was never a heartless person. As long as he didn't cross her bottom line, then as long as he treated her well, as long as he didn't treat her particularly badly, she could be a good wife. Moreover, the feelings that she reciprocated might not necessarily be love. Obviously, what happened just now had stimulated this living hell. Now, he was holding her tightly and wouldn't let go. Jingwan obediently let him hold her. Putting aside the fact that he occasionally made people feel ashamed and resentful purely as a lover, this person was really impeccable. What's more, he was so hot that he let people see the scene. At this moment, Jingwan didn't care about being held. Moreover, if this could make him less terrifying and let him be comforted, Jingwan would accept it if he took advantage of her. However, was the one in his heart already gone? Thinking about it, according to this person's temperament and power, if it wasn't the separation of life and death, how could it be called lost and left? There is a saying that the living could never compete with the dead. Jingwan was glad that she didn't think of competing, otherwise she didn't know what kind of virtue she would have made. Jingwan continued to stroke his back to comfort him and didn't say a word. Under the premise of not understanding the situation, it was often wrong to say more. Jingwan didn't want to be the understanding flower. However, it was a certain someone who knew the essence of taking a mile after taking an inch. When he found that his panic and weakness made Jingwan's heart soften, he hugged her and let go. With a hot start, he became unscrupulous. Except for his hands that didn't go too far, his mouth didn't stop. Jingwan was fine. She was not injured or sick in his arms. Even if the fear in her heart were still there, the reason that she almost lost gradually came back. Seeing that they had been seen, there was no difference whether it was once or many times. As the culprit who caused her to be like this, naturally, she had to make up for it. Therefore, a certain someone was well versed in playing the blame game. Even if Jingwan was dizzy from his kiss and did not notice it for a while, because she was worried about his condition, she always maintained a bit of rationality. After a long time, it was difficult for her not to notice his condition. Well, he could be said to be insatiable. Other than him, there was no one else. Therefore, she should not be soft-hearted to this kind of person. Would a person like him be fragile? Why would he need someone to comfort him? Stop joking. Therefore, Jingwan did not hesitate to pinch his waist. In any case, it wasn't the first time he had offended his superiors, and he didn't seem to do anything about it. This bad habit was also caused by him. Jingwan's realization was something worth celebrating for a certain someone. This could be considered a historical improvement. Li Hanyuan was suddenly pinched. Even if his skin was rough and his flesh was thick, Jingwan did not really want to kill him. It would still hurt. She even deliberately hissed twice to gain sympathy. Before Jingwan could realize whether it was true or not, she subconsciously removed her strength. He grabbed her hand on his waist, leaned his forehead against hers, and laughed in a low voice. "Kind darling, are you feeling sorry for me?" The words "kind darling" evoked the pain in Jingwan's heart. She pushed him away with a dark face. She would rather face the guy who was like the dark devil than face this shameless bastard who took the opportunity to tease her. "You are really heartless. You throw me away after using me." Jingwan gritted her teeth and looked at him. "No one will think you are mute if you don't speak." Li Hanyuan could not help but want to touch her face again. This time, Jingwan quickly blocked him. Li Hanyuan was not angry. He still smiled seductively. "You seem to be in good spirits. It seems that you are not frightened." Jingwan paused. Her face was a little pale. Her lips moved, but she did not say anything. Li Hanyuan took the opportunity to kiss her again. "Li Hanyuan," Jingwan could not help but explode. Then she realized the current situation. This bastard. Sure enough, it is better this way. This time, it is my fault. I promise that these clowns will not appear in front of you again. Also, don't be afraid of me. From a bit of teasing to an indescribably gentle and affectionate. When you go back, drink a bowl of calming soup and then sleep. Forget about this. If he held it tightly and did not mention it, he might forget. It might also take root in his heart and sprout in the future. It was better to open it up now and tell her that it was nothing. Tell her that she did not need to care. He did not know how she endured the first time she killed someone in her previous life. In short, it must not have felt good. He did not know whether the impact of killing someone for the first time was greater, or the impact of seeing someone else kill someone for the first time was greater. He did not know. Those had all happened in his previous life. It had been too long, and he had long forgotten such small things. He clearly knew that she was watching. He clearly knew that he might scare her, but he still did it without hesitation. Perhaps it was not only because of extreme anger and fear, but also because he wanted to let her see the complete him. If he was willing, he could let her see only the good side of him. If he was not complete, no matter how perfect he was, it would still be a lie and a lie. So, Wan, don't be afraid of me. Your fear and resistance will make me do things that are out of my control. I might even hurt you. That will take my life. And when I die, I will definitely drag you down with me. As for the wrong place, it was probably giving them the opportunity to hurt her. Fortunately, she was fine. Otherwise, Li Hanyuan would definitely not care about anything and immediately exterminate the Ruan clan, flay some people, pull out their tendons, grind their bones, and scatter their ashes. Looking at her for a moment, he tilted his head. The gentleness in his eyes disappeared without a trace. Yu Zhongqing, send her back. If there is even the slightest mishap, bring your head to see me. The Imperial Guard commander did not dare to neglect and hurriedly appeared, asking Wang Ye to rest assured. Regardless of whether Jin Qin Wang wanted to send him away or for other reasons, with his valiant skills, his bodyguards were also not bad. He really did not need protection. Moreover, this kind of temporary assassination, there should not be a second time. Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan again. You go back first. I will deal with the matters here. Remember, today's assassination, you were only implicated by Ben Wang. As for the person behind the scenes, Ben Wang will definitely get to the bottom of it. This person was like this. One moment, he was still flirting, and the next moment he was deadpan. Everything he did was for you, making you lose your temper. If you really insisted on being angry with him, in the end, you would probably be the only one angry. So she nodded. Wang Ye, be careful. Li Hongyuan nodded. Don't worry, Ben Wang has not married you yet. Jingwan directly ignored him. Brushing past him, she directly left. Unlike when she came, she was leisurely and unhurriedly, as if she wanted to quickly avoid him, this god of pestilence. It could be seen that Li Hongyuan's shameless healing method was really very effective. However, in the end, would Jingwan appease him more, or would he appease Jingwan more? This was really hard to say. Jingwan's maid quickly put away the things and followed. Before the Imperial Guard commander left with the Imperial Guards, he naturally had to salute Li Hongyuan. With Jingwan's departure, the coldness on his body once again returned. He looked at the commander. Yu Zhongqing, you are a smart person. What should be said, what should not be said, you shouldn't need Ben Wang to teach you. You have meritorious service in killing the assassins today. Ben Wang will ask Fu Wang for meritorious service. This was originally our duty. We do not deserve any meritorious service. Meritorious service should be rewarded. Wrongdoings should be punished. This is heaven's law and earth's principle. Yu Zhongqing's breathing stopped, his heart a little bitter. He just followed the powerless Wang Ye out for a stroll. How could he let him see things that he shouldn't see? Even if it was the emperor, for the sake of the lives of these brothers that he brought out, he also couldn't say things that shouldn't be said. Isn't you Darren thinking too much? Ben Wang is talking about the Luo family's third Mississippi. Well, this was what he should care about. He didn't care what he shouldn't care about. Also, it couldn't be said that he shouldn't care. It should be that this kind of thing, no one would casually talk about it. They were the Imperial Guards, not gossipy women. Besides, that was Jin Qin Wang's private matter that couldn't be more private. Letting the Luo family's third miss be frightened, it is our dereliction of duty. Since that's the case, hurry up and catch up. Yes. From afar, he watched as Jingwan followed the original path and passed by the stream. It looked unusually simple and relaxed. However, Li Hongyuan licked his lips. Did his little sweetheart know what he had done with his red lips that anyone with a discerning eye could tell? Li Hongyuan looked at the grilled fish stuck in the ground. He casually picked one up, looked at it, took a bite, and tasted it. At this time, it hadn't turned cold yet, and the taste was actually not bad. In the eyes of the people around him, his daily food couldn't be more particular. However, at this moment, he chewed on the small fish other than the head, along with the fish bones, and ate it completely. That posture was no different from his usual eating. Eunuch Mu lowered his eyes and thought, well, the master really likes Miss Luo. It's really deep in his bones. Muin, take the remaining 2 fish back. Yes. Mu Gonggong hurriedly responded. There was no convenient thing to hold, so he carefully held it in his hands. These are not 2 grilled fish, but the most delicious thing in the world. Bring the head and Ben Wang. As usual, send it to Ruan Fengfei. Li Hongyuan said. The guard were stunned. Did Master mean that these 3 people were sent by Master's future concubine? Yes, judging from their last actions, they knew that they were obviously here for the future concubine. They all knew that the Master of the Ruan family was fond of, so it was not strange that she sent people. However, although they had long known that there was a problem in the backyard of the Ruan family, Today was the first time that they had a real confrontation. They were stronger than expected. Although they were all ordinary guards, except for the leader, they should not be worse than the secret guards of other families. However, in a one-on-one situation, they were no match for the other party. However, wasn't it a bit arbitrary to conclude, just because of this? In an instant, they threw this idea out. How could Master judge wrongly? Even if it was wrong, then whoever he said would be the one. Even if it wasn't Ruan Fangfei, it had to be her. Ordinary methods couldn't be used to plant people in the backyard of the Ruan family, so Master didn't continue to use other methods. As for more, it was not something they could know. What Master wanted to know, they could know. Even if they knew, they would rot in their stomachs. But they should never inquire about things they didn't know. However, this is usual? According to what? In the end, it was still an E who understood in an instant the maid from the Dragon Boat Festival. Send people to the front. Li Hanyuan understated his order. Hearing his words, sure enough, in Master's heart, only the Luo family's third miss was a treasure. If they dared to touch her, they would have to be prepared to bear the most tragic fate. However, Master only needed to say a word, but their subordinates had to run around until their legs broke. It would be best if they did it well, but if they didn't, then they were incompetent fools. However, it was really not that easy to do this matter now. Along the way, people were together. Not only were there the guards of each family, there were also the Imperial Guards. The security was extremely tight, and the possibility of being discovered was very high. But there was no other way. That woman's brain was sick. She had to provoke Master at this time, causing them to be implicated. This time, if they didn't properly teach her how to behave, it would be hard to make up for the pain of being oppressed by their master. Approaching, Jingwan used a brocade handkerchief to cover her mouth. She couldn't see it, but that didn't mean she couldn't feel it. There was a slight tingling sensation. It could be seen how ruthless a certain beast's bite was. Jingwan suddenly stopped, turned around, and looked at Yu Zhongqing. A man who wasn't even 30 years old. His facial features were also very handsome. As the commander of the Imperial Guards, he was the head of the third rank. Moreover, this man was said to be unmarried and was also one of the capital's golden bachelors. You, Darren, regarding matters involving my daughter, please do not speak about it later. Yu Zhongqing understood her meaning. Miss Luo, please rest assured. Many thanks. Jingwan squatted. Miss is too serious. Wang was famous for being fond of beauties. The beauties by his side changed again and again. They had all heard of his so-called great favor, but they had never seen the specifics. They all said that he was affectionate and fickle, never truly stopping for any woman. What they saw today, they were afraid that they hadn't seen it. At least, he was very attentive to his current fiancée. And Jingwan, through the previous matter, could be concluded that she wasn't delicate and weak, and her courage was also outstanding. The marks on Jingwan's body weren't obvious, but they weren't difficult to find. For example, old Madame Luo immediately noticed her condition. She was so shocked that she immediately got up and hurried forward. Wan, what happened? Jingwan timely showed a bit of panic. Grandmother, we encountered an assassin. What? Not only old Madame Luo. Everyone present was shocked. Wan, what happened? Not waiting for Jingwan to answer, Lu Chengdi's furious voice came from the other side. Yu Zhongqing, where is Jin Wang? These people came back, but his son and his son's guard are gone. Replying to the emperor, the assassins have been executed. Wang Ye is fine. Wang Ye said that he would stay to check the situation and ordered this subordinate to escort Miss Luo back. Check the situation? Asking a Wang Ye to do it, what are you doing? Emperor, please forgive me. Wang Ye ordered this. This subordinate doesn't dare to disobey. Yu Zhongqing's words made Lu Qingdi speechless. Immediately send people back. Emperor, Wang Ye is back. Lu Qingdi's guard reminded. Sure enough, Jin Wang walked in unhurriedly with two people. That undisciplined virtue made Lu Qingdi so angry that he almost flipped the chessboard on the table. When Li Hongyuan walked in, evil creature, I just took some time to wash the blood off my body and came back a bit late. How did I offend Fu Huang? Li Hongyuan looked at Lu Qingdi as if he was looking at an unreasonable person. Lu Qingdi's veins on his forehead jumped. This evil creature, this evil creature. Lu Qingdi tried to calm his anger. After a while, he asked, "What happened?" "You ask Yu Zhongqing. Ken is going to change clothes." Just as he was about to leave, his eyes fell on Jingwan. Then he said to old Madame Luo, "Old Madam, this is Ben Wang's fault. It's just that the assassins appeared so suddenly that Miss Luo might be a bit frightened. Before, she accidentally fell down. It seems that there is a little bruise on her face. Help her apply some medicine and boil a bowl of calming soup." Many thanks to Wang Ye. After that, Li Hongyuan left, and Jingwan was taken away by old Madame Luo. Yu Zhongqing briefly described the process of the matter. Li Hongyuan didn't bring all of his people back. Then this matter was probably being dealt with. Lu Qingdi thought for a moment and didn't send anyone else. Since it was an assassin, then the only place that could leave clues was on them. His evil creature's son wasn't stupid. Would he not search? Old Madame Luo saw Jingwan's lips. How could she not know? After being annoyed, she could only sigh helplessly and didn't say anything. Instead, she asked about the assassins in detail. In fact, Jingwan only participated in that thrilling short period of time. She really didn't know more than that. After thinking about it, Jingwan didn't say that she suspected that the assassins were targeting her. The only one who had a big grudge against her was probably Ruan Fangfei. However, she was a young lady who lived in seclusion. How could she be so capable? If she could really do this, Jingwan would suspect her origin. Li Hongyuan didn't appear again after that. However, Lu Qingdi wasn't in the mood to continue playing chess, so he didn't leave. The remaining people, led by an E, finally came back. "What did you find?" Lu Qingdi asked bluntly with a sullen face. An E pretended to hesitate and then took out an object. It was a token less than 3 fingers wide. Seeing that thing, Lu Qingdi's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. It was something that belonged to the rebels. They were descendants of the royal family of the previous dynasty. Since the establishment of the Qi Yuan, he was already the 5th emperor. However, this group of people was like a group of strong rats. No matter how hard he tried, they wouldn't die. Every once in a while, they would jump out. What they liked to do most was to assassinate the royal family members. As long as they were related to the royal family, they would seize the opportunity to take a bite or two. However, this group of people hadn't appeared for many years. How could Lu Qingdi not be angry when they appeared again? However, this group of people was too cunning. No matter what he wanted to investigate now, he wouldn't get any results. Lu Qingdi left in a huff. Then, the Luo family finally quieted down. This matter was suppressed by Lu Qingdi, so as not to make people panic. When it was close to noon, everyone began to cook. For a while, the aroma filled the air. Ah! A scream broke the peace and tranquility. Chapter 172. The voice came from the Ruan family. Something had indeed happened to the Ruan family. To be exact, something had happened to Ruan Fangfei. It was said that Miss Ruan was feeling unwell due to the extreme heat. She didn't sleep well last night and took a nap in the carriage. It was also said that she didn't like to have people by her side when she was sleeping. In her deep sleep, she felt something strange and thought that it was a servant girl who came to see her. She casually asked but didn't get any answer. Thus, she opened her eyes in displeasure and then, what she saw was 3 hanging bloody heads. Her hair was disheveled and her entire face was like that of her servant girl on the day of the Dragon Boat Festival. Other than the eyes, there wasn't a single place that was intact. Even the eyelids were cut off and the eyeballs were protruding. Not to mention that she saw at the moment she opened her eyes in a small space. Even if it was at other times, even if someone described the specific situation and was mentally prepared, it was very likely that she would be frightened when she saw it again. On the day of the Dragon Boat Festival, Ruan Fangfei was looking for abuse. She ran to see the dead servant girl and was severely frightened. Later, she was injured and her face was injured. In the first few days, she even had a mental breakdown. When she finally got better, she was ruthlessly provoked by Li Hongyuan. Then, rumors flew everywhere. Unknowingly, it made the Ruan family have opinions about her. Naturally, she didn't have a good day. Ruan Fangfei broke down and screamed in the carriage. Because the heads were hanging low and close to her, there was clearly a certain distance between them, but she couldn't pass through and leave this extremely terrifying place. She shivered and curled up into a ball. That appearance was as pitiful as it could be. Her screams naturally attracted the people of the Ruan family. They hurriedly climbed into the carriage and opened the curtain. In the end, the servant girl also screamed and scrambled back. Then, she fell out of the carriage in an unusually sorry state. The people behind also vaguely saw the situation inside. Who still dared to go up? The other masters, led by Ruan Ruiz Hong, quickly rushed over and heard Ruan Fangfei's mournful and desperate screams. What happened? Ruan Ruizhong's face was as black as water. It seemed that since the Dragon Boat Festival, everything in the Ruan family was not going well, and the root of it all revolved around Ruan Fangfei. No matter how stable and calm he was, he felt mentally and physically exhausted, and it was difficult for him to smile. Master, human heads, in the carriage, there are 3 human heads hanging. Ruan Fangfei's mother, on the other hand, was the first to react. She rushed up and pulled open the curtains. Although she couldn't see the front of the heads, she was certain that they were human heads, especially when they were dripping with blood. As for her daughter, she was tightly stuck to the innermost corner. At this moment, as a mother, her eyes turned red. Her face revealed a frightening viciousness. She took a deep breath and entered the carriage with a rather capable posture. With a wave of her hand, she pulled down the 3 heads and then reached out to hug Ruan Fangfei. Ruan Fangfei was shocked and scared. She punched and kicked. Madame Ruan comforted her while holding her up. However, when he stood up, his body paused for a moment, as if he had no strength to continue. She carried her daughter out unsteadily. Just as she stepped out of the door, her legs went soft and she almost fell. Ruan Ruiz Hong saw her face as pale as paper. Her body was clearly trembling, but she still held her daughter tightly. His eyes turned red and his heart ached. He hurried forward, wanting to personally carry her. However, he was already a pile of old bones. Not only did he not manage to catch her, his body tilted and he was directly pressed to the ground. Only then did the others react. They rushed forward in a flurry. It was unknown if it was because they were so scared that their hands and feet went soft. After a long time, not only did they not manage to get her up, they even made a mess. What a motherly love. This woman is really good at pretending. If I didn't know her true face, I'm afraid I would have been deceived by her. After watching the good show, he turned around and left. It wasn't easy for them to settle down properly. Ruan Fangfei was a bit deranged. She was knocked unconscious. Her mother also fainted from shock. As for Ruan Ruiz Hong, his waist was injured. This matter was naturally reported to Lu Qingdi as soon as possible. Lu Qingdi was still angry because of the assassination attempt on Li Hongyuan. Now that such a thing happened, how could he not be shocked? On one hand, he sent an imperial physician. On the other hand, he had Yu Zhongqing and the Minister of Justice go to the scene to investigate. Everything close to the carriage was all moved away. No one dared to take a step closer. It was clearly a sunny day, but the lonely carriage gave people a strange and gloomy feeling. Fortunately, the people who came were not ordinary. The curtains on the door and windows were hung up. The scene inside could be seen clearly. There were 3 heads scattered at the bottom of the carriage. Only one of them was facing upwards and could be seen clearly. At that moment, even people who were used to seeing corpses and limbs couldn't help but take a step back. They let out 2 turbid breaths before stepping forward. The Minister of Justice gestured to one of his subordinates. That person nodded and walked closer. However, he didn't rush up. Instead, he carefully looked around, including the edges of the carriage. Then he stood by the window and looked inside carefully. He frowned slightly. Then, he got into the carriage and checked the 3 heads without changing his expression. During this process, the Minister of Justice remained silent. Yu Zhongqing also stood quietly by his side. When that person got down from the carriage, he said, "Sir, the person who did this did it very cleanly. Except for the inside of the carriage, there are no traces of blood. The three people, except for their eyes and ears, are unrecognizable. The openings are very neat. It can be seen that when they did this, they were very clean. In addition, their faces were scratched after they died. The blood should have been splashed later. It's not certain if it's human blood. After a pause, he continued, "If I'm not wrong, the person who scratched the faces should be the same person who killed the female corpse on the Dragon Boat Festival. Is this true? But didn't you say that the female corpse was scratched when she was alive? There should be a big difference. How do you know? Many people have their own little habits. The wounds are very similar. The murderer for the Dragon Boat Festival incident was not found at all. Of course, that incident happened in the capital and was not under his jurisdiction. Logically speaking, today's incident should not be under his jurisdiction either. However, in this convoy, he was the only one who was in charge of criminal cases. Because the murderer for the Dragon Boat Festival couldn't be found, naturally, no one knew the reason. Everyone guessed that the servant girl saw something shady. However, this speculation was still puzzling. If the murderer of the two cases was really the same person or the same group of people, then the previous guess might be overturned. After all, the common point of the two cases seemed to be the youngest daughter of the first wife of the Grand Secretary. But what was the reason? First, investigate the identities of these three people and see if they are from the convoy. Yes, the three heads on the carriage had been taken down. Yu Zhongqing glanced at them. However, he inadvertently saw a small red mole on the earlobe of one of the heads. His eyes couldn't help but shrink, because in the previous assassination, there was one person who had such a mole, the person whose head was cut off by Jin Qinhuang. Yu Zhongqing didn't believe that this was a coincidence. Moreover, the face was covered in blood, only the ears were clean. If he remembered correctly, the ears of the female corpse on the Dragon Boat Festival were all cut off. Yu Zhongqing's hair was somewhat numb. He always felt that this was simply left for him to see. Yu Zhongqing's hand that was holding the knife at his waist couldn't help but tighten. After investigating, he quickly discovered that the Ruan family was missing 3 guards. Yu Zhongqing's palm pressed against his forehead, his brows tightly knitted. If these 3 people were really from the Ruan family and really assassinated Jin Qinhuang, no, it should be the 3 assassins of the Luo family's 3rd young lady, and Jin Qinhuang secretly sent them back and specifically targeted the Ruan family's young lady. Didn't this mean that Jin Qinhuang knew the whole story from the beginning? The reason he did this, perhaps it could be seen as for the person he cared about. In fact, these could not be mentioned for the time being. The key point was that the guard of the Ruan family were actually stronger than the Imperial guards and the Qinhuang's guards. This was a big problem. It should be known that the guards of the general officials were only relatively strong, ordinary people. In addition, Jin Qinhuang knew the identities of these 3 people, but planted it on the rebel thieves. From the beginning, he cut off everyone's idea of finding the assassins in the convoy. He knew that there was a problem with the Ruan family, but did not reveal it. Why was that? And the reason why Yu Zhongqing thought that it was framing and not suspecting that the rebel thieves were in the Ruan family was because he was also present when the 3 assassins were searched. He even personally did it. There was clearly nothing. Then, how could the people by Jin Qinhuang's side have a rebel thieves token and carry it with them? One question after another, it was also one secret after another. The more you know, the faster you will die. Or, Yu Zhongqing thought of Jin Qinhuang, who was like a death god and had a splitting headache. He inadvertently knew some things and then was forced to know more. Even if Jin Qinhuang wanted to win him over, wasn't his courage a bit too big? He didn't let him express his position at all and let him know even more things. Was he really not afraid that he would report to the emperor? The red mole on the earlobe was considered a good sign. These 3 people were identified as people of the Ruan family. As for where their corpses were, how did their heads end up on Ruan Fangfei's head? The first question was unsolvable. He sent people to the vicinity to search, but there was nothing. They also didn't see any place that resembled the crime scene. He just gave up like that. Who let them be just 3 servants? It was simply not worth the trouble. As for the second question, he asked a lot of people. There were 3 people who said that they were knocked unconscious and didn't see anything. The others didn't even see a ghost. Yu Zhongqing looked at the forest in the distance. He clearly said that there were 3 assassins. Why didn't anyone connect the two? Why didn't anyone mention going there to take a look? In the end, it was only because there were 3 guards. Their lives were cheap. If they were replaced by 3 people of high status, he was afraid that they would have already gone to look for them. Yu Zhongqing spat out a mouthful of turbid air. In the end, he didn't say anything. He also cherished his life. He was also selfish. He didn't live for himself alone. It must be said that old Madame Ruan was pretending to faint. When her people told her the details of the matter, she clenched her fists and her nails almost sunk into her flesh. Jin Qinhuang? Was it also him on the Dragon Boat Festival? Fang Fei had always been steady. How could she do such a thing this time? However, looking at her, in nearly a month's time, not only was her face disfigured, but she was also like a rat crossing the street. Being forced to do such a thing, there was no way to blame her. However, there were some things that she didn't dare to confirm. If the person hidden in the dark was really Jin Qinhuang, then this hidden enemy was much more terrifying than expected. She wasn't his opponent at all. Jingwan looked fine on the surface, but after all, it was the first time she saw such a scene. She couldn't completely recover in a short time. After drinking the calming soup, she took advantage of the fact that they weren't on the road and slept for a while in the carriage. Gong Mama and the wet nurse took turns fanning her. As for the several servant girls, Jingwan also let them drink the calming soup and sleep for a while. They slept well, but old Madame Luo ordered not to disturb her, so they missed lunch. However, it didn't matter. She didn't have an appetite. After waking up, she just casually made some simple cushions. A few of the servant girls woke up before her and looked to be in good spirits. In fact, they were mainly frightened by the terrifying aura on Li Hongyuan's body. When they saw the bloody scene, they immediately looked away. It didn't affect them much. After all, Li Hongyuan was a living person and didn't specifically target them. When his aura dissipated, it didn't leave them with a psychological shadow. At this moment, they quickly prepared food for Jingwan. Before going to bed, she applied some ointment on her lips. Originally, it was only a little red and swollen, but now it was basically invisible. When she ate it, she didn't feel strange. Jingwan ate half full and stopped eating. The people around her all knew that it was hard for her to get carsick. If she ate too much, she would feel even worse, so they didn't persuade her to eat more. Then Jingwan noticed something wrong. Look at the sun. The time for staying has already passed. Why haven't you left yet? Something came up. We'll probably have to wait for another hour, Qingzhu replied. What happened? It didn't seem strange that she encountered an assassination when she was just taking a walk. Something happened when she woke up after sleeping. Jingwan lowered her head and drank a mouthful of the soup to relieve the heat. She didn't wait for their answer. She raised her head and saw that they all wanted to say something but stopped. She suddenly became curious. What's wrong? Does it have something to do with me? It has nothing to do with you. It's just that you were frightened earlier. Don't bother to listen to those dirty things. Nanny Gong came over and explained to Jingwan. Jingwan's heart skipped a beat. She was scared because she saw the bloody scene, and also because she witnessed the scene of Li Hongyuan cold-blooded killing. It was just a normal thing. How could it affect her? It was most likely that she saw blood again, or someone died directly. It was really quite unpeaceful along the way. Where's sister-in-law? Is she taking a nap? Since Nanny Gong didn't want her to know, she didn't ask, lest she felt disgusted. Chapter 173. Jingwan nodded. As long as her own people were well, it was fine. Other people, it was not her turn to care, nor did she want to care. Not long after, the servants started to pack up the things. The Luo family shed was built quickly, so it was naturally not a big problem to pack it up. Without much effort, everything was properly packed up. They could even take advantage of the time before departure to rest for a while. Sun Yijia impolitely boarded Jingwan's carriage. She saw that there was indeed no effect, so the carriages continued to move forward. Other than the two of them, there was also a servant girl left in the carriage. Did sister-in-law sleep well? Very well. Sun Yijia nodded and picked up a sour plum from the small table and put it in her mouth. Because the window curtain was not down, Jingwan suddenly saw a carriage that was abandoned after the horse was untied. It was a good carriage and looked ordinary. It definitely did not belong to any Wang Ye or Wang Fei. However, there were other family members in the Wang Fu. Naturally, the carriage was not of that high standard, and in front of the Luo family, it was not only members of the imperial family. Jingwan's heart moved. If everything was fine, this carriage naturally would not be abandoned like this. It seemed that it was related to the previous incident. Whose carriage is this? It should be the Grand Secretary's. Sun Yijia glanced at it and withdrew her gaze with lack of interest. However, there was a bit of schadenfreude in her tone. The one who had an accident was Ruan Fangfei, so she was naturally happy. I heard that when Ruan Fangfei was resting, a very scary and dirty thing appeared on the carriage. She was very frightened and even went a bit crazy. Jingwan was rather speechless. Ruan Fangfei was her enemy, but she did not feel anything. This sister-in-law was actually happy. It's good that she went crazy. It's best if she went completely crazy. Then she doesn't need to enter Jin Wangfu to avoid annoying people. Sister-in-law. Jingwan was helpless. How could she still remember this? All right, I won't say anymore. She, Ruan Fangfei, has been plagued with bad luck recently. If I say too much, it will be bad luck. Jingwan didn't know whether Ruan Fangfei was unlucky or not. She only knew that Ruan Fangfei was indeed unlucky, and it was bloody unlucky. Even if it wasn't something that could scare people into madness, it was obviously messing with her. Jingwan originally wanted to take revenge, but looking at it now, it was as if someone was taking revenge for her. Moreover, it was done step by step, little by little. It felt like they could kill Ruan Fangfei with one stab, but in fact, they were using a blunt knife to cut her flesh. They would not stop until she was tortured and in heart-wrenching pain. She didn't know if it was to avenge her, but it was a fact that someone was targeting Ruan Fangfei. Then, who was this person? Was it the Jin Qinhuang Li Hanyuan who had humiliated Ruan Fangfei in the beginning at the Gongqin Wangfu? There were many things that seemed right, but were actually wrong. However, when you really thought about it carefully, you would find that it couldn't withstand the scrutiny at all. There were many loopholes that couldn't be connected at all. Then, these clues seemed to have been deliberately left behind by someone, and it felt like they could be erased. Perhaps it was because of the Ruan family's matter that Lu Chengdi's mood wasn't very good. Of course, most people didn't know that Jin Qinhuang had been assassinated by a rebel thief. After that, unless it was necessary, that they didn't stop. Fortunately, for 2 consecutive days, nothing happened. At this speed, they would arrive at Chengde's summer palace in another day. However, on the evening of the first day, they passed by a river. However, the bad luck was that the bridge was broken. The depression in Lu Chengdi's heart hadn't dissipated, and now that they encountered another unlucky incident, he couldn't help but feel angry. It should be known that in front of the ceremonial guards, there were people who cleared the road first. Along the way, unrelated people were cleared early on and prohibited from passing. Previously, they didn't receive the news that the bridge was broken. Now, wouldn't it make them furious? Unfortunately, no matter how angry they were, the bridge was broken, and there was no way around it. It couldn't be repaired in a short period of time. They couldn't go back to the capital, so they could only choose to take a detour. The result of their exploration was that there was a rope bridge 1 li upstream. Obviously, it couldn't be used. Further up, they didn't find it for the time being. 2 li downstream, there was still a rope bridge. Finally, they found another bridge 7 or 8 li downstream, which could barely allow the carriage to pass. Thus, the caravan turned back. Because they couldn't walk along the river bank, they could only turn back 1 li and go downstream. However, it was a road that could barely allow the carriage to pass. Along the way, it still needed to be leveled, so the speed was naturally slow. In short, it could be summed up with one word: annoying. You say almost every year they had to avoid the summer heat. Every year they had to walk that road. Naturally, they had to maintain it every year, but the result? The road became more and more uneven. Jingwan sat in the carriage and really suffered. Unfortunately, because Luo Jingbua had to take care of his wife, and because the sun was high up in the sky, other than the horse pulling the carriage, he didn't prepare any more horses. Even if she wanted to get down a ride, she couldn't. It was also at this time that he let a horse over. His intention was self-evident. Jingwan was slightly silent. To be honest, when Jin Wang was considerate, it really made people unable to resist and hard to refuse. However, Jingwan's gaze stayed on an E for a moment. "You're Jin Wang's bodyguard captain?" Replying to Miss Luo, yes. He didn't know Jingwan's intention, but he still obediently answered. Jingwan didn't want to continue to suffer in the carriage, so she accepted Li Hong Yuan's kindness. "Thank Wang Ye for me. Miss Luo is too polite." And he left the horse behind and left. Jingwan got down from the carriage. She naturally knew how to ride a horse, but she wasn't very proficient. If it was flat, she could run, but if it wasn't flat and there were some small hills, she could only ride. Compared to Jin Wang's horse skills at the Great War Princess Fu, the difference was more than 108,000 li. Fortunately, the current journey was slow. To ride a horse to keep up was just a small matter. Then, Jingwan put on a gauze hat, stepped on the saddle, and mounted the horse. When she sat down, Jingwan found something unusual. The cushion of the saddle felt the same as the couch in the carriage, soft and slightly cold. Looking at the shape of the saddle, she knew that it was definitely prepared a long time ago and wasn't a temporary idea. Moreover, this horse was a BMW, but it seemed very docile. It didn't kick its hooves just because the person on its back was a stranger. Most likely, it was prepared before leaving the capital. Perhaps it was specially prepared for her and was needed in an emergency. Jingwan didn't want to be narcissistic, but it was proven more than once that Jin Wang really did it for her. This fake could be so attentive, then what about the original one? To what extent did Jin Wang treat her well? However, under normal circumstances, when dealing with a substitute, other than forcibly seizing, shouldn't there be a standard for every word and action of the original? Especially for this kind of overbearing and unreasonable person like Jin Wang. However, the truth was not like this. He never asked her for anything, but everything was according to her own preferences. She could understand it. Jingwan felt that she was still deeply influenced by Jin Wang. Otherwise, why would she think about it every time he did something? He clearly told her every time, if she couldn't figure it out, then she shouldn't think about it. AI, riding the horse, neither fast nor slow, neither fast nor slow. Without the uncomfortable feeling of dizziness and panic, Jingwan felt quite leisurely. However, it seemed that they wouldn't be able to cross the river before dark. Was this the rhythm of having to sleep in the wild again? Speaking of this summer palace, they had to go there every year. Only the road was repaired, but there was no relay station along the way. According to reason, it should be calculated at the right time to set up a relay station for resting and lodging. Moreover, because it was a place where the emperor needed to use, it should be very luxurious. As a result, along the way, there wasn't even a normal relay station. Jingwan asked out of curiosity, and the result made people speechless. Chengde's summer palace was built during the reign of Emperor Taizu of Qiyuan. It was not the palace site left by the previous dynasty that was remodeled. Except for the more than 30 li that overlapped with the official road, there was no relay station until the palace. According to Emperor Taizu, his descendants should know the hardships and appreciate the beauty of the mountains and rivers. There were few opportunities to go out on weekdays. Therefore, the journey to the summer palace was a rare opportunity that must be grasped. Therefore, Emperor Taizu called for his descendants to eat and sleep in the wild. After hearing this, Jingwan wanted to ask Emperor Taizu, "Did you have a stroke in your brain?" As the emperor, the master of the world, it was really eating and sleeping in the wild. It would only be more tiring. Just imagine, in order to let the emperor eat and sleep well, without a relay station, how many things would have to accompany the journey? How cumbersome would it be? It would be more reliable if you ordered that the relay station be built like a summer palace. Sure enough, as Jingwan expected, there was still some distance to the bridge. The sky was getting darker and darker. If they didn't find a place to sleep for the night, they would probably have to move in the dark. Lu Qingdi had to order to find a place with a dark face. Soon, there was a village built near the river not far ahead. Lu Qingdi lowered his status. It was a big village with more than 100 households and a population of nearly 1,000. Because it was not particularly far from a capital, some people had been to the capital. However, not everyone had the opportunity to see the emperor. Therefore, when they heard that the emperor was coming, the whole village was frightened and excited. They had long known that the emperor would go to the summer palace in a few days. Some people even wanted to sneak a peek. Of course, they could only see the majesty of the emperor from a distance. They absolutely couldn't see the emperor clearly. After all, the clattering of the iron hooves of the guards was frightening. Jingwan didn't know that it was unusual for such a big village to be a few miles away from the summer palace. However, it seemed that it had existed for a long time and had been well behaved. Moreover, the imperial guards had carefully checked it and found that there was no problem. For something like an assassination, it should be considered very lucky to encounter it once, right? Therefore, they settled down in the village. Every family wanted to make room for these nobles, especially Li Zheng, who wanted to invite Lu Qingdi to stay at his home. Unfortunately, Lu Qingdi said that he didn't want to disturb the villagers, so he politely declined. As for whether he really didn't disturb the people or disliked it, they didn't cook their own food but borrowed the kitchens of the families. Jingwan had already returned to the carriage. Sun Yijia also returned to her and Luo Jinghua's carriage after the hottest period. Looking outside through the gap of the window curtain, both adults and children poked their heads out to look inside with curiosity and excitement. However, not only the imperial guards, but the guards of the families also stuck to their duties. The young ladies and madams didn't show their faces, but the servant girls were busy going in and out. One must know that they were all servants. In the eyes of these people, they were unattainable. The peasant women were inevitably envious and jealous. Some men even couldn't help but reveal a lustful look. These beautiful and tender young ladies, perhaps they would never see them again in their lives. Jingwan frowned and put down the curtain. No matter what, she inexplicably didn't like this place. It wasn't that she had any opinions about these people who were at the bottom. In her opinion, if she couldn't change the social structure, then it was better to completely isolate them. No matter where it was, in fact, there was a phenomenon of hatred for the rich. If one didn't come into contact with it, perhaps it would be better. Once one came into contact with it, there would be an obvious difference in feeling and the gap in one's heart would grow. This could become the root of crime. When Jingwan heard that there were some young masters who seemed to be curious and brought people to wander around the village, her frown deepened. This wasn't a small village. There should be a lot of unmarried young ladies, and there must be some outstanding ones. Who knew if they would disturb the spring water because of them? In her previous life, there were a lot of melodramatic encounters in ancient dramas. However, if it wasn't a trap set by someone, even if it wasn't, the innocent young ladies who enter a noble house because of their appearance wouldn't have a good ending in the end. Jingwan sent someone to tell Luo Jinghua to stay in the carriage obediently to accompany his wife. Originally, Luo Jinghua and his wife wanted to go down the carriage for a walk. However, when they heard Jingwan's words, they dismissed the idea. When they lifted the curtain and looked outside, they seemed to understand Jingwan's intention. Jingwan casually ate some food in the carriage. Originally, she didn't prepare much, and there wasn't much left. However, even so, if those farmers saw it, they might be drooling. Jingwan basically didn't use the serving chopsticks when eating. Therefore, she basically wouldn't give the leftovers to the maids. Now, it was even more impossible to give it to outsiders. Wash the dishes yourself. In addition, send some snacks, dried fruits, and other things to the master. Also, leave some money for him. After Jingwan gave the order, she didn't say anything else. It might be more convenient to take a bath when sleeping in the wild. However, here, Jingwan felt uncomfortable. Therefore, she decided to endure it for the night and just casually wash up. No matter how much time was wasted, she would definitely arrive at the temporary imperial residence before tomorrow night. At that time, she would have a good bath. As night fell, the village gradually quieted down. Only the occasional dog barking could be heard from afar. Jingwan didn't sleep very well in the carriage. In the middle of the night, Jingwan suddenly woke up. It should be known that this situation was very rare for her. Jingwan faintly heard the noise. Was it almost dawn? "Mama, what time is it?" Mama Gong was right beside her. She reached out and patted her. "It's still early. Do you want to drink some water?" Yes. Then a small lamp was lit. The light wasn't strong, but it was just enough for her to see clearly. Without Mama Gong's order, the maid quickly brought in the water. After all, their carriage was right next to them. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.